welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. So it's Thursday, June 2nd, depending on when you're listening to this, of course, but it is the official start of the NBA Finals. That's right, game one is tonight. I know it seems like it's been a long time. What was it, last Thursday, last Wednesday? The Warriors have been off for about a week since closing out Dallas in the Western Conference Finals. And then, of course, the Celtics have been off since Sunday, so about 4 days since they finished off the Miami Heat in a Game 7 thriller. So here it is. It's time, and we're going to talk a little bit about the finals, but more specifically, a couple of the major players in it. Obviously, we've had the two superstars for the teams, Jason Tatum, leader of the Celtics, and, of course, Steph Curry, leader of the Golden State Warriors. So what's interesting about this, right? There's a couple things here. So I want to touch on. The first thing is Steph Curry. And we know how great he is. We know the impact that his particular skill set, being arguably the greatest shooter of all time, has had on the modern NBA, the way the game is played in terms of the analytics revolution and the amount of three-pointers that the average team is taking, the amount of three-pointers that the two teams average per game, which is about 80, which is completely nuts. But that wouldn't be if you hadn't had a guy like Steph Curry who can basically pull up from anywhere in the gym and make shots, right? With a guy like Steph Curry, there's almost no such thing as a bad shot because he can make it from anywhere. His range is insane. Now, the NBA has always had great shooters, your Mark Prices, your Reggie Millers, your Glenn Rices, so on and so forth. There've always been a ton of great shooters. I know I left out a lot, but those are some of the main ones that come to mind off the top of my head. But never have we seen a shooter like this, like Steph Curry, in terms of a guy who can do it all. He can move without the ball, catch and shoot. He can stand in one place, catch and shoot. He can do it off the dribble. He's got a tremendous handle. You know, he can pull up pretty much on whatever defender from wherever on the floor. We've never seen a guy that's been able to combine that type of shooting from all ranges, all over the floor, the way he can. So this is kind of why we look at him as the greatest shooter of all time. Now, don't get me wrong. Let's be real here. Like I always say, era has to play a role. He plays in an era where guys aren't picking up 94 feet, where the defense is much less physical. So his legs aren't tired late in games. So he's able to still continue to shoot those shots. Now, with that said, obviously he's in tremendous cardiovascular condition. So he's not getting tired, but not getting tired without someone leaning all over you, or not getting tired when you're getting bumped running off all those screens all day, is a totally different thing from not getting tired, when you're playing against that type of physical defense, no hand check, no forearm check, none of that, right? So you got to assume that as great a shooter as he is and as great an offensive player as he is for this era, that it wouldn't quite be the same if he came up in, say, his dad's era. Now, I don't think there's any question that Steph Curry is a better player on the NBA level than Del Curry was, and Del Curry was a starter. However, Del Curry dealt with much more defensive impediments, shall we say, than Steph does. But this is not an argument on whether or not Steph could play back then. That's not the argument at all. What we're talking about is Steph's overall greatness. We're talking about the fact that he's been to the finals 5 times and he's won 3 of them. Interesting note, by the way. Look at that. He is a superstar on the upside, above 500 in the NBA finals. I know a guy who many people are going to tell you is the GOAT, who's well below the 500 mark in the NBA finals. But again, this is about Steph Curry and later about Jason Tatum. So what I think is so interesting kind of when we're coming up on the finals today and the different storylines that many people are talking about, it's not only the greatness of Steph Curry as a player and the things he can do, some of which I already mentioned, and another quick one, him being the all-time leader in three-point makes, him being all-time leader in playoff three-point makes, blah, 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 blah. The list goes on in terms of shooting accolades. But what I find super interesting is he has an opportunity here to win his 4th championship in this final series. And with that 4th championship, he also has an opportunity to do something he has not yet done, and that's win an NBA Finals MVP. Now, there are some people who could care less about the accolades and awards, and that's cool. But when you start measuring guys in terms of all-time positioning, all that stuff comes into the that stuff comes into the evaluation, right? It's who did you beat? When did you beat them? Or who did you crack when you were lined up against them? What did your team do? What did you do? What type of statistics did you put up? What type of awards were you given, right? Robert Ory's got 7 championships, but nobody's going to put him in the top 10, right? Nobody's going to talk about him as an all-time great player, right? Despite the fact that he's an all-time great winner. So there's a whole bunch of different things that get rolled into the equation when you're evaluating where a player stands historically in the NBA pantheon, right? So what do I find so interesting about this? I'm hearing people saying that if Steph Curry wins this fourth championship and can get the finals MVP, which is pretty much the only thing his resume in terms of accolades is missing, because we know he's a two-time regular season MVP, the only unanimous MVP in league history. He's been a scoring leader. He's a multiple-time All-Star, All-NBA. As I mentioned, he's made the most three-pointers in NBA history, widely regarded as the greatest shooter in NBA history, blah, blah, blah. It goes on, right? But the one thing eluding him is the NBA Finals MVP, which is kind of the general topping on the cake. Now, Steph doesn't really care about this. He's all about winning, and he knows he doesn't need that to validate himself. He said that. So as his teammate Draymond Green on the Draymond Green show on his podcast. But, for a lot of people, that would be kind of the icing, the cherry on top, the icing on the cake, whatever you want to call it, in terms of cementing Steph in where he is. Now, a lot of people have him in interesting positions in terms of historical hierarchy. Chris Broussard of FS1 and NBA Insider, he has said on multiple occasions he believes Steph Curry is the best small player ever. I don't believe that, as great as he is and as much as he's won. I don't think there's any way we can say he's better than Isaiah Thomas. I also am not sure he's better than Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson just didn't have the supporting cast as Steph Curry had in terms of winning championships. And again, different era, more defensive oriented. But again, that's a show for another pod. Not really discussing that. Maybe we'll do that. Best small player of all time. Anyway, I've heard people say that with another championship, Steph could become the greatest point guard of all time. I think that's totally asinine. He is a very good facilitator. He can run the offense, but the fact is, in the system that the Warriors run, he's not the initiator of offense most of the time. Most of the time, he's playing off ball. Draymond Green, has that point forward role. So Steph, even though he's 6'3" and technically listed as a point guard, in a lot of cases doesn't really play the point guard position, right? He's a combo guard or a small two, right? As great as he is, there's no way I can't even put him in the top 5 point guards of all time. I know a lot of people disagree with my rankings, but that's cool because they're my rankings. But there's no way you can tell me at the point guard, notice the emphasis there, point guard position, that he's better than Magic Johnson. There's no question about that. Can't tell me he's better than Isaiah Thomas. Can't tell me he's better than John Stockton. Can't tell me he's better than Jason Kidd or Gary Payton. Again, all of these at the point guard positions. All those guys could score. All those guys could defend. Magic was probably the worst defender out of all of them, but his size, his court vision, everything he could do, his ability to literally play just about every position, probably not the shooting guard, but everything else is what makes him such a historical anomaly and just who I regard as my second best player of all time. So to say that Steph Curry, and again, this is no slight on Steph, this is no knock, but to say that him winning again moves him into the best point guard or the best small guard or any of that, or I've also heard that Steph Curry wins this championship, gets finals MVP, now he suddenly moves into the top 10 players all time. Listen, again, no disrespect, no shade, love what Steph has done. There's no way I can put him in the top 10 all time. And it's just a factor of who are you going to remove to put Steph Curry in there? See, that's the problem with the lists, right? When you have these guys who are all timers, unless somebody is just simply that far and away superior, it's really hard to say, okay, I'm going to pull one guy out of the top 10 or whatever to put another guy in. So let me real quick run down my top 10 list to you, okay? My top 10 of all time. And I actually did a show on this a little while ago. You can check that out if you like. But my top 10, obviously, number 1, Michael Jordan. Number 2, Magic Johnson. Number 3, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Number 4, Larry Bird. Number 5, Hakeem Olajuwon. Number 6, Bill Russell. Number 7, Shaq. Number 8, Wilt Chamberlain. Number 9, Kobe. Number 10, Tim Duncan. Okay, I know a bunch of you guys are going crazy because I don't have LeBron in my top 10. Again, my list. Don't care if you go crazy or not. But, with that said, if you are curious to know why I rated guys where I rated them, you can go check that other episode where I go into a little more depth about why I put guys where I put them. With that said, okay, so let's even say that you have LeBron in your top 10, like many of you do. I don't, but let's say you do. Who are you pulling out of there to put Steph Curry in? Steph Curry is not surpassing any one of these guys, even with another championship and that finals MVP. He's just not in my estimation. And I don't think in the estimation of most people who know basketball. Now, that's cool. It doesn't say that Steph Curry is not having an all-time great career, is not obviously first ballot Hall of Famer, and is not going to go down as one of the probably top 20 players of all time. But to immediately say that we're pushing him into the top 10, yeah, I just can't do that. So that's where I am on that. I think it's so interesting just to hear how so many people move guys around and say, well, if you do this, you do that, now you jump ahead of this guy, or you jump ahead of that guy. I get it. But I don't see how we can say Steph Curry's the best small player ever. I don't see how we can say Steph Curry's the best point guard ever. I don't see how we can say Steph Curry is going into the top 10, even if he does win this championship and win the finals MVP. Okay. So again, no shade, Steph. Love him as a player. Huge fan, always have been, but let's not go too far. Now, here's the other side of this thing, right? Jason Tatum, this is his first finals appearance. Obviously, he's a leader and the best player on the Celtics. This team is, we know what they hang their hat on. They hang their hat on defense, and they get it done that way. All due respect to them. This series for me is such a pick 'em. Not really sure who's going to come out on top. Both of them have similar size and abilities in terms of the lineup. Obviously, the Warriors better shooting team, but the way both of them are built in terms of being able to have versatility defensively and be able to switch everything and cause a lot of problems for the opposing team, it's definitely going to be a very interesting setup. But back to Jason Tatum, this is obviously his first time and his teammates' first time on the big stage, and his opportunity to really step out there, cement himself as, maybe one of the top 5 or top 7 players in the NBA if he's not there already. I think he made first team All NBA this year. So most people by that award, that accolade would say that he's probably a top 5 player. I don't know if I go quite that far, and I'm a diehard Celtics fan. I've been a Boston Celtics fan since 1986, since Bird was still waving the towel. But I would have to really go down the list to say whether or not Jason Tatum is a top 5 player in the league. He's probably got a top 5 skill set. I don't know if he's a top 5 player yet, but again, that could be the topic of another show. But if he and the Celtics win the championship here, and let's say he gets finals MVP, right? Now you hear players such as Bradley Beal talking about, can Jason Tatum be the face of the NBA? Yeah, not really sure about that. That's another one. Now, Jason Tatum, outstanding player, doesn't seem to get in any trouble. Looks like, the type of guy who's a good father. He's always got his son Deuce with him. And don't get me wrong, I am not the guy that touts all this off-court stuff as being the best player. But to be the face of a league is not only about being the best player, there's other stuff that goes with that. And I'm not so sure that Jason Tatum is face of the league material, at least not yet. Like, I look at the guy, he doesn't seem to have, perhaps the personality of some of these other guys who've been the face of the league, the Magics, the Michael Jordans, the Shaqs. Like, his personality needs to be more outgoing, more gregarious, right? He seems pretty kind of quiet, reserved, and to himself, and that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. But when you're talking about face of the league, you want a guy that you can market, right? And I'm not saying he's not marketable. He's clean. He doesn't, as far as we know, have any issues, et cetera, et cetera. I think he's a brand Jordan guy. So nobody's saying that he's not marketable, but when you're talking about face of the league, I think you have to have that uber outgoing personality and the game that really makes people, stop and watch. Tatum is athletic. He's smooth. He's skilled. But is he a guy like I'm not going to say Zion because he's barely on the floor, but a Ja Morant that's going to give you these jaw-dropping dunks and drives to the hoops? No, not really. But he's a guy that could cook you easily, with a smooth jump shot, with a good handle. He can rebound the basketball. And now you've seen during this playoff run, he can play make and get assists and pass the rock. He can defend within the Celtics scheme. So not trying to knock him, not saying he's got weaknesses, but to say face of the league, I think that's a big stretch. I don't know if he's there yet. Where this would catapult him in terms of his standing among players in the league, if they win the championship, he plays well, wins the finals MVP. That's going to be interesting to see, right? Because afterwards, you're going to hear all the best player in the world discussions, blah blah blah, and just because you win a championship and finals MVP doesn't make you the best player in the world, right? Didn't make Paul Pierce the best player in the world. Didn't make Chauncey Billups best player in the world. I don't know if there was ever a time as great as he was that Tim Duncan was best player in the world, Tony Parker, you know, all these guys who have the distinction of being named finals MVP. Tremendous honor, means you played the best in a series full of theoretically the best players in the league. You've got the two best teams, right? I I get it. I get it. It doesn't necessarily mean best players in the league, but theoretically, right? So out of the two best teams, you played the best during that series. So I totally get it. Have all the respect in the world for it, and have all the respect in the world for Tatum, but I do not see him being face of the league. And again, this is coming from me, a Boston Celtics fan. I think more curious for me is where the Boston Celtics and Jason Tatum in particular fit in terms of measuring their all-time great small forwards. And that to me is so interesting. Like, I don't know how they keep getting this right? So, I mean, back in the day, way back in the day, you had Hondo, John Havlicek, and then you had Bird, and then you had, it probably would have been Reggie Lewis, but God bless the dead, he unfortunately died early. But then you had Paul Pierce, and then you have Jason Tatum, and in between there, you could have had Len Bias, who was touted as being the next superstar small forward for Boston. Again, God bless the dead. He unfortunately passed early, but I'm really curious to know, like, is there something, some specific trait or some specific measurable that the Celtics look for at the small forward position that they keep hitting on that particular position? Again, that could be a podcast for another day. I need to start writing these down, but that's very interesting. And so now the question becomes for me more so than can Tatum be the face of the NBA, like where is he going to start moving towards in terms of his career and where he's going to stand in Celtic history and Celtic lore? Because much like the Lakers, if you are high up on those lists in Boston, you're generally going to be high up on those lists in NBA history, right? So, that's gonna be real interesting. Anyway, super excited about the final starting tonight, finally, right? So, but with that comes also a pinch of sadness because that means when this series is over, the playoffs are over, and now we got a break. But that also moves us closer to football season. So, I'm on both sides of the fence with that. But anyway, thanks for tuning in today. That's all I got on this topic. And you know what to do. If you haven't already, click the subscribe button in the lower right corner of your screen. Click the notification bell so you can be notified when new episodes come out. If you want the show only audio version, then you know what that is too. You see it right here on the screen if you're on YouTube. If not, you can get us anywhere your audio podcasts are obtained. And if your audio podcast platform allows it, please go ahead and give us that 5-star review and leave us a comment, whether it's on YouTube or the audio version of the show. All that stuff helps us to move up in the algorithm, helps more people to find us. All right. And speaking of more people finding us, if you enjoyed the show, please give us that like, hit the like button, and don't keep it to yourself. You know other people who are sports fans who would love it. Go ahead and share it with them. Anyway, if you're a basketball fan, which I should hope you are, and you probably are if you're listening to this episode, enjoy game one of the finals, and I'm out. Peace.